This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. Ton of Jets talk to get to today. Really looking forward to welcoming in Scott Billeck of the Winnipeg Sun, Brandon Rewucki of Skates and Plates, and a very special guest joining us in hour number 2, Winnipeg Jets center Pierre-Luc Dubois. Should be a great one. Lots to get to coming off of last night's 5-0 win over the Calgary Flames to finish up the home portion of the preseason. Jets off today, out to Calgary tomorrow, and then a few days in Banff for a little bit of team building. We'll talk about camp and all of what's to come with Pierre-Luc Dubois a little later on in the program. Obviously, we've got to get to the latest developments on the Hockey Canada story as well. Blue Jays getting ready to start their series tomorrow, well, against Michael Remis' Seattle Mariners. All of that coming up later on in the program. But before we do that, welcome to everyone that's with us live on YouTube or watching after the fact. Make sure you've hit that red subscribe button and join us daily if you're able to at 1 o'clock. And if you're subscribed to the channel, of course, it's completely free. Unable to join us live, get onto YouTube later on. You'll have the freshest Winnipeg sports content available for you. And of course, wherever you get your favorite audio podcasts, make sure you subscribe to Winnipeg Sports Talk there as well. And of course, a huge thanks to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Couldn't do it without them, including Princess Auto, our friends at Coolbet Canada. Thursday night football edition of The Lock Shop just dropped with my pal Justin Nielsen. Check that out as well, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Of course, Not Auto Corp, Consolidated Supply, Wallace & Wallace, Vita Health, Aikens Lake, Culligan Water, F Apparel, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Canadian Club Whiskey, Breezy Bend, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, and of course our favorite local beer, Little Brown Jug. Let's get going here on a Thursday afternoon. Michael Remis joins me now. Rima, what is up?
Yeah, just fired up from the Jets win yesterday. I mean, I know it's preseason, but it was an exciting game for sure. I mean, 5 goals, power plays looking good. Big save Dave. I think there were some questions from people about him. He's looking good, but also this Jays Mariners playoff series. So I can't wear a jersey tomorrow for Stoot Show, but I got the jersey on today.
Where's your confidence levels now that the Mariners have finally returned to the postseason?
I don't want to get too deep in this because we've got a lot of Jets, but I'm actually kind of confident. I think home field advantage for the Jays is real, but I think when you have Luis Castillo and Robbie Ray going 1-2, I think you got to feel good about that. So I think it's going to be a good series. I am looking forward to watching it tomorrow at 3 after the show.
Yeah, I guess Robbie Tight Pants is going to be going in game number 2, I believe, for the Mariners. And of course, tomorrow it's Alek Manoah on the hill for the Jays. Their undisputed ace, getting the first pitch from John Schneider. So we will touch on that a little bit later on. But as you mentioned, very interesting game last night and a very important preseason game for a number of Winnipeg Jets on the bubble trying to crack the roster. And we'll get Scott Billeck's thoughts and Brandon Rewucki as well a little bit later on. As I mentioned, Pierre-Luc Dubois in the hour 2 of the program. But Remo, before we talk about the positional battles and the power play and some of the bright lights of skaters, you mentioned Big Save Dave was phenomenal last night. And listen, I know that he's going to be a guy that's not going to get a ton of action as long as Connor Hellebuck is healthy. But that was a performance certainly to instill some confidence in the coaching staff that he's a guy that can still put out a great professional effort and help teams win hockey games. He was just great last night and got on the scoreboard as well. He had more points than anyone in a Calgary uniform.
That's pretty good. And I think we had a lot of questions about Big Save Dave. You know, he hadn't had that great of a season last year. He said he wasn't playing a lot, and he definitely got a lot of action last night. 37 saves in the shutout, and that's what you got to do if you want to get the confidence of your team, earn some more starts. I think the Jets played well in front of him, clearing out some of the rebounds, but he's got to make the saves. He saw the shots, and he was pretty good. It was a big night for the new additions. There weren't many, Hustler, new additions to the Jets free agent signings, but the other one, Sam Gagner, I think opened up a lot of people's eyes, getting some power play time on the first one. Beautiful sauce pass outweighing the defenseman to Kyle Connor. He had 2 assists. Sam Gagner, we talked about his veteran presence, good in the room. We talked about his versatility. He can play in pretty much, we think he can play on any line. He's on the power play. He did have 20 seconds on the penalty kill as well. Does that count? But he can also play any of the 3 forward positions. And it's funny, I was listening to the CJOB post-game show, and they're like, you know, in Gagner's early years, you know, you would be like, what is he? Is he a winger or a center? And they couldn't figure out what he was in Edmonton. Now it's like, he's great. He's everything. This is exactly what the team needs. And I had friends text me, he is the new Kyle Wellwood, the veteran signing min salary, late in the training camp signing, guy who has had success before, comes here, gets maybe a bigger role than he'd had and gets to play with some really talented players. We can talk about the top line as well, who was awesome last night. But you get to play with them. Hey, points happen when you can put its pass like over the defenseman's stick onto Kyle Connor's tape right in there, like right in front of the goalie. He's putting that in every time.
That was such a sweet move by Gagner. I mean, I believe it was Rasmus Andersson, if I'm not mistaken, that was the defenseman. And he had him bite so hard on that first move, opened up space, put it right on Kyle Connor's stick, and 81 isn't missing that from point blank range. I really like the look of Gagner on the power play. And what is interesting is that Pierre-Luc Dubois wasn't in the lineup yesterday. I think, we assumed that Dubois was part of that PP1 group. But there is the potential if Gagner really clicks, and we'll see whether they go with that or try something else, in tomorrow's preseason finale against the Calgary Flames. It does open up some options, maybe to get a little bit more firepower on the second power play unit. Well, we'll see how all of that transpires, but I will say this, Gagner did not look out of place at all on the Jets power play yesterday, and really made the most of opportunities, whoever he was out with, getting on the score sheet a couple times. And listen, if this is what the Winnipeg Jets got for, as you mentioned, a league minimum salary on a 1-year deal, it is going to be money well spent. Never mind the effect that I think he can have as a well-liked veteran player in the room as part of the a new atmosphere around the Winnipeg Jets locker room.
Yeah, we were pumped for the Gagner signing. We set off the alarm. I posted on our TikTok, and we got some comments like, "You got excited? Yeah, you got excited for Gagner?" I was like, "Yeah, we were waiting for something." He's fitting in well. He led all forwards in power play ice time yesterday. So taking a look. He hadn't played a lot of preseason, and there he was with 2 points alongside Kyle Connor. He had Gagner 2 assists, Kyle Connor 2 goals. And how about Nikolai Ehlers looking strong with the no-look pass, the pass to Scheifele from the point in the power play, which was power play looking pretty good. They were 3 for 5. Ehlers 1 goal, 2 assists. So I don't know, a lot of excitement, and I do wonder, is this Jets top line, Scheifele, Ehlers, Connor? Are they one of the top lines in the league? And you got to get excited if you think maybe they are, or maybe they're up there. I wouldn't say like they're number one. There's a lot of good lines, but they got skill.
Okay, so this is a perfect time to get into this. This line is exciting. Kyle Connor scored 47 last year. Mark Scheifele's certainly capable of popping 30. Nikolai Ehlers, very capable and expected to score 30. I was going to talk to Pat and the guys over at Coolbet, and this is sort of off that bet that we had on Monday, where they did a prop on combined yards from Deebo Samuel and Cooper Kupp for the Monday Nighter. What is the number? What is the over-under on total goals for Connor, Scheifele, and Ehlers combined as a line for the year?
Oh, you wanted me to give you a number right now?
Well, I'm trying to think, like, what do you think that line would be? I mean, like, I'm with Balls last night after the game. We're talking about everything that we've seen, and he goes, and we were also getting ready for our hockey draft. And, we're saying, well, Kyle Connor can certainly get 40, Scheifele 30. And I'm thinking, like, can one line produce 100 goals this season? And if that happens, I mean, if one guy's scoring, the others aren't. But, I mean, we saw in Calgary last year, that top line of Lindholm, Gaudreau, and Matthew Tkachuk all put up massive numbers. And I guess we'll find out what that number would be. I'll get the bookmakers to make it, and we can decide on whether we're going to jump on it one way or the other. But the bottom line is this unit, if they can really click together, we know what Ehlers can do. We know what Scheifele's capable of, and we certainly saw the best of Kyle Connor last season. I think there is the potential that this could be one of the top lines in the National Hockey League. Whether they can do it consistently, how long it'll take them to really click. Well, maybe it won't take long at all, because they certainly looked like they were clicking last night. And I can tell you, a lot of people fired up leaving the building last night talking about that new look number one line for Rick Bowness' squad.
Yeah, the passing, the skill. I think the question that we have is, can they play defensively responsible? But you saw on the Connor forecheck to set up his goal with the pass from Ehlers. I mean, you can do that with that speed. So they looked strong. I'm trying to think. So I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. Connor, he's got 50, and I think you want to be conservative, you could say Scheifele and Ehlers have 25 each. I think injuries, assuming they're going to play full 82, I think they're probably going to miss some games because of injuries, just because it's NHL. You guys get hurt and you can't predict it. But yeah, that's 100 right there.
If it's 99.5, are you taking the over for those three players this season?
Okay, I'll tell you what Dom has. He's got Scheifele 31, Ehlers 33, and Connor, he's got 44. So even there, like that's over 100. I think over 100. I think that's almost like a favorite to be over 100 from those three. But it's not about those three. It's about the rest of the lineup. Can they get goals? They're trying to improve. I like how they say, okay, we need to get better at these areas. Power play, you get a couple percentage points better. That's a couple goals. Penalty kill, if we can get a couple percentage points better in penalty kill, that's a couple goals saved. So I like the way the coaching staff has approached it. And it really seems like they've identified areas where they were not good, and they're trying to fix those areas. And it seemed like we didn't have that in previous years, and they were kind of just rolling with what they had been doing for so long.
Yeah, no kidding. And I'm with you. I mean, listen, it's easy to get fired up and excited, as fans should be, about what that line looked like and what they were able to do last night against a Calgary lineup that had all of their NHL defensemen in, their top couple of lines. But it is so much more about, having one line blow up if this team's going to be successful overall. And, certainly the style and the structure of the Winnipeg Jets game is, significantly different from what they had in the past. And I think that is going to be somewhat of a process. You'll probably have some nights where it looks great. Probably have some other nights where it's not all there together. But I do think, Remo, one thing is very, very clear, is that these players are listening to Rick Bowness, and his message is sinking in with them. And there's no better place to start to talk about that than in shift length. It was last Tuesday where we heard Rick Bowness talk about the length of the shifts of one line in particular, and then making a point of reiterating that the veterans cannot be the problem. And it seems like that message resonated with some of the most important players on the team. Just looking at the shift report last night from Natural Stat Trick, Mark Scheifele, average shift length, 44 seconds. Kyle Connor, average shift length, 42 seconds. Nikolai Ehlers, average shift length, 41 seconds. That is significantly less than what those players did in game number 1. And lo and behold, look at the success that they had last night against the Calgary Flames.
There you go. Again, identifying areas where they need to improve. The team seems to be listening, and I think you have to be encouraged that there is some buy-in here, apparently. So, look, you can look at all the projection systems that have the Jets, anywhere between 3rd and 6th in the Central. But I think what we're looking to see is improvement from last season. And even though they lost Stasny and Kopp, I do think this coaching staff, I think they feel like they can get much better result than we saw, even without those 2 players. So definitely exciting over a 5-0 win. It's better, they say preseason doesn't matter, but way better having a 5-0 win than a 5-0 loss. We'll see what happens on Friday. We don't really know what the lineup is. They did make one roster move, sending down Arvid Holm, who was the backup, who came up to back up Riddick yesterday. So they're off today, and we're kind of awaiting now what they're going to do with this roster. They got to cut a couple guys.
Yeah, well, and listen, we're going to get to that coming up with the guys, Scott Billeck and Brandon Rewucki, before we chat with Pierre-Luc Dubois of the Winnipeg Jets. Listen, going into last night's game, there was a lot of talk about Brad Lambert, and justifiably so. He was brilliant in the 3rd period in Montreal, helping the team come back and win late, and he was the star of the show on Saturday night in overtime late in the 3rd period. Yesterday was a big opportunity for Lambert. He was playing with Cole Perfetti and Dominic Toninato. And Remo, maybe if you can, let's we're going to hear a few clips from Bones. But if you can, get number 6 ready on the Lambert Perfetti line. There were some moments where you saw the incredible speed, particularly and skill of Brad Lambert. But that was a very different game against a bigger, meaner team. And I have a feeling the results of last night are going to mean that Brad Lambert most likely will be plying his trade, at least to begin the season, with the Manitoba Moose. But here's what Bones had to say on the Lambert Perfetti line last night.
Again, they haven't practiced with Dom at all. So, Doobie's going to be in there with Wheels, and that changes the dynamics of the lines and for those kids. But they got a good taste tonight. Cole's played in the league before, Brad hasn't. So it was a good eye-opener for Brad, I'm sure. Again, you're sitting on the bench, and you look at Jonathan Huberdeau, and you're looking at Kadri, and you're looking at Lindholm, and you're looking at a lot of very good players on the other team. It's a little bit intimidating the first time you see them all together for a kid like Brad. So they handle themselves fine tonight.
All right, so there's Rick Bowness, and I think it was pretty clear after that game with the comments of the head coach that, if you were counting on Brad Lambert being in that opening day lineup, probably not the case. But I still believe, Remo, especially if we, as I expect him to end up with the Manitoba Moose to begin the season, depending on what happens in the top 6 with injuries or availability of players, I don't think it's out of the question to think that Brad Lambert gets a call-up at some point. But I think it will be very good for him to play a lot, play in a very important role for Mark Morrison in the Manitoba Moose, and get used to this North American style of hockey for the first year overseas, and get his feet wet as an AHL professional before getting a real taste of the NHL.
Yeah, just from reading between the lines, I know Ken always talks about that when relating to coach speak. He just said, hey, they're going to have Dubois and Wheeler in with Perfetti. They're not going to start mixing it up. They have the, their lines, I think, set, and, he's 18 years old. We definitely saw some flashes, but having him with the Moose, probably the best thing. I think being a waivers exempt does play into a lot of these decisions too. And also, not having a roster, they like the Barron with Lowry and Appleton line, and we'll kind of see how this 4th line shakes out. But I do wonder if they kind of just go with, hey, Manalainen, you had a great camp, but it's easier to send you down than the Harkins and Toninato. Toninato, shout out to him for that breakaway goal last night.
What hilarious. The timing of him coming out of the penalty box. I don't know if I've ever seen a guy literally come out of the penalty box with the puck on his stick like basically like he was shot out of a cannon for a breakaway by the Calgary Flames. The special teams were really good last night. Obviously, the power play was a big part of the success. And you saw 55 and 27 and 81 all over the score sheet. Remo, grab number 2 if you could. And of course, Sam Gagner, who we talked about, really contributing on the power play as well. Brad Lauer spoke about a new system, trying to have some different looks and being able to adapt like the top power plays in the league. We saw some of that last night. Here's Rick Bowness on what he saw from the Jets with the man advantage.
Well, they just move the puck so quick, and they're finding those seams. And Sam was good out there tonight and hanging on to it and making plays. And they used, they went to the open ice and then they moved the puck quickly and they found some seams, which they're very good at. Ehlers is a threat coming downhill, not only to score but to find that seam.
Let's go in reverse.
Once you make that seam, you got the whole block and the whole penalty kill running around, and the goalie's got to move. And they just did a great job moving the puck. And Ehlers' goal is a perfect example of that. Everyone he's over here, and Sam finds him wide open on the other side.
All right, Rick Bowness on the power play. And obviously, I mean, like the new defensive structure, everything that the coaches are trying to instill in this club, very different from what they've done before. And Bones talked a little bit about the progress he's seeing in his team of learning their special teams arrangements.
There's progress, but I sent them an email in 1st of September, everybody coming to training camp, that we were going to spend a lot of time on specialty teams to get ready for it in training camp, because again, the league is so tight, your specialty teams are going to win or lose a lot of games, and a lot of one-goal games in our league, and it just there's no room for error. So our special teams have to be better, and we'll just keep working on it. But they were told in September, come to camp, get ready to spend quality time on our specialty teams, and we get to Banff, we're going to spend more time on them. It's something you have to continually work on.
Bones firing off emails to start off September saying, hey, we're getting after it on the power play and the PK guys, get ready to work. And as he mentioned, that will be a focus certainly of the club when they prepare out west for a few extra days before waiting to start their season Friday, a week tomorrow, against Jacob Trouba and the New York Rangers. Number 4 is this one. Bones talked about just his thoughts on the guys getting the new systems that he and his coaching staff is installing.
We've made progress every day, and we play like that 5-on-5 when we're pressuring. We'll be a very hard team to play against. Use our speed, protect the middle of the ice, all the things we've been talking about, and not giving them time and space as much as we can, and just take it away. 5 guys have got to work together. The forecheck is a 5-man unit. Neutral zone is a 5-man unit. D zone is a 5-man unit. Getting the work as a 5-some. We'll just keep working on that.
All right, Jets head coach Rick Bowness after last night's game. And, one more, we've talked a lot about, the things that get us out of the seat and get people excited, the goals, the power play, Ehlers, Connor. But this team and the success of this team over the course of the year will truly be defined by if they can be a better defensive hockey team. And this was Rick Bowness's thoughts on his club's defensive play at 5-on-5 last night.
Yeah, 5-on-5, there's a lot of good things. There's some things we got to tighten up. Some mistakes made with the puck that we can clean up. The 6 penalties we have to clean up for sure. That's just way too many again. All you're doing is putting their best players on the ice, and it's the penalties and it's the timing of those penalties that we've got to clean that up, and we won't be letting the opposition get so many shots on net. So those are things that we'll keep working on. But overall, it was 5-on-5, we were pretty happy with. We did a lot of good things in terms of pressuring them and not letting them carry the puck in. A couple of their rushes, we had control of the play. We made the right decision on what to do. We just didn't execute it, which gave them the puck, and they got some chances off of that. But that happens.
All right, Rick Bowness of the Winnipeg Jets last night after his club's 5-0 win, talking about the improvements in the defensive play at 5-on-5. Now, the one part of the game that no one was picking apart was the goaltending performance of David Riddick. Here is Bones on Big Save Dave last night.
Yeah, we saw him in the bubble a couple of years ago, and he was in Nashville last year, but Saros played all the time, so he didn't really get into a groove. He was outstanding tonight. It was the big saves he made, but also the timely save at the right time. And that was huge for us tonight. So he was outstanding.
All right, Rick Bowness on Big Save Dave last night. Actually, Remo was quite funny. I was sitting beside a friend that shares the seats beside me, Brian Boyd, and he was there with his little guy, Eddie, who I think is, 3 or 4. First game ever. And he was all excited, and he was holding the lineup card, and he was a big goalie fan, and he was a big fan of Connor Hellebuck, and we introduced him to Big Save Dave, as Dave introduced himself to Jet fans last night, and I can tell you that he made quite an impression on a young child in his first game, and he made a big impression, I think, on Winnipeg Jet fans. I mean, that was just a heck of a way to finish up the preseason for Riddick in his new home in Winnipeg, in a real prove-it year on a 1-year deal.
There was a lot of questions about the backup goaltending last year. Eric Comrie, that was heading into the season. Eric Comrie answered them. And I think there were questions about Brossoit when he was signed. And then he answered them with his play and got a big contract in Vegas. Now, Dave Riddick had a down year. Questions, okay, can he be the guy? But for a veteran goalie, min-salary backup, he was pretty good in the first preseason game. We'll see or the last preseason game they played. We'll see how it translates to the regular season. But they seem to have a history of bringing in these goalies where we're like, well, how is this guy the backup? And then being to the point in the regular season where you're like, this guy needs to play more. And it was pretty clear Eric Comrie needs to play a couple more games, take some of the load off Hellebuck. We will see how this split shakes out in terms of games played with Riddick and Hellebuck. And if Riddick keeps, stopping every shot he faces, then you'd like to think he's going to play some more games.
No doubt. Hey, listen, we'll maybe got a clip from Ehlers and Connor, which we'll play a little bit later on, maybe before Brandon joins us. But we have to get this Daryl Sutter quote from after the game. I mean, Sutter has been in like playoff form with his quotes throughout the preseason, throwing shade at Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau. He had quite a bit of shade for his entire squad last night. He was not particularly pleased. Here's the Calgary Flames head coach with his thoughts on last night's 5-0 loss here in the Peg.
Our power play sucked and theirs was really good. And our penalty count sucked too.
That was this.
Is there a better quote in hockey than Daryl Sutter? And he seems to be firing out heaters for us pretty much every single time he gets to a microphone. Definitely here for it. Well, by the way, we'll also get to the streaming experience. I was at the game. How did you feel about it? Not question of the day coming out of last night's game. In the chat, you can let us know what you thought about the streaming experience. Obviously, I didn't see it because I was there. But the question for you, and this gets back to a topic we'll get to with Scott right away. We've got the triple threat ladder match for the 6th spot on the blue line. If you were looking at last night's game, was there any of the three of Ville Heinola, Logan Stanley, or Dylan Sandberg that stood out to you as far as really grabbing that spot? In the comments, the why not question of the day, brought to you by our friends at Not AutoCorp, Waverly and McGillivray, and online at not.ca. All right, before we bring Billeck in, got to give a big shout out to the guys down at Consolidated Supply, our newest sponsor. It's great to have Spicy Joe and the guys on board with us. They've been huge in the golf industry for a long time. They are the club car dealers. So if you ever have needs when it comes to golf carts or want to get something tricked out or specially made, Consolidated Supply is the place to do it. And alongside golf, incredible DIY irrigation systems for your property or artificial turf if you're done with taking care of the lawn or you want to build that dream putting green. Our pal Joe down at the branch will take care of you. And hey, if you're thinking about working on or making some big improvements to that backyard, hot tubs, outdoor kitchens, high-end barbecues, Consolidated Supply has it all. Find out more online at cte.ca or pop down and see the fellas at 1395 Niagara Road East, 204-470-3832 if you want to hit them up on the horn. Vita Health Fresh Market ready for Thanksgiving weekend. If you want great prices on natural organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, including Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products, pop by and shop at one of 7 Vita Health Fresh Market stores, or of course online at myvita.ca. With the kids back in school, Vita Health is also your spot for great school-friendly snacks and lunch items, as well as great immunity products like vitamin C and D, and of course delicious lunch options at their grab-and-go deli featuring Vita Market, salad, soup, sandwiches, and more. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. And I got to give a big shout out to my guys, Gord and Nathan over at Wallace & Wallace. Got a great tour of the operation yesterday, seeing all they've done. The fencing options at Wallace & Wallace blew me away. I mean, I already knew that they were the leaders in the industry for decades, but all the different types of fences that they have and the different, industries that they work with really blew me away. But when it comes to garage doors, that's what's really keeping them busy right now. And listen, you still have time before the snow flies to get a new garage door built and delivered and installed in about 4 weeks. And of course, they work with Clopay, the largest garage door manufacturer in the world. They've got so many options for you, 161 different styles to choose from. And even if you don't need a new one, Wallace & Wallace are the experts when it comes to garage door maintenance and repair. Whatever your needs are, they've got you covered. Pop down and see them at their showroom on Lawson Road. Find out more at wallacedoors.com or give them a call. Big thanks to Wallace & Wallace, and working on some exciting stuff and an exciting new program with Wallace & Wallace, which we'll tell you about in the coming weeks. All right, let's get Scotty Billeck in here to chop it up and talk Jets. Billeck, what's going on? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great. You know, listen, we were all over the Jets, and we will get to the Jets. But just before we kind of get down that rabbit hole, which probably will take up the majority of our conversation, we had spoken in the past about what was happening with Hockey Canada, and the last couple of days coming out of Andrea Skinner's appearance in that hearing on Tuesday has been, in some ways, in my opinion, a reckoning that was essentially bound to happen, and I think the writing was already on the wall. But when you look at the news ticker over the course of the last 24 hours, Tim Hortons out, Canadian Tire out, Scotiabank, TELUS, all removing their sponsorship dollars from Hockey Canada. Some moving their money to Sheldon Kennedy's Respect Group. Others committing that they'll still support the women's programs and the sledge hockey programs. To me, Scott, I mean, they can be as, defiant as they wanted for a while, but this is finally when the rubber's hitting the road, because without the incredible engine that is sponsorship for Hockey Canada, this organization almost ceases to exist. I mean, what's been your take on what we've heard and seen happen over the last 48 hours?
Yeah, I don't think a better thing could have happened in this situation than Andrea Skinner going up there and looking like a complete idiot in front of, the members of parliament in the committee there, right? She was so bad that, it's led to the sponsors pulling out of things. I mean, it's sort of sad when you kind of think about it, because the situation itself, the sexual abuse allegations, all that stuff weren't enough for some people, even the sponsors in the end, to kind of do it. It was Andrea Skinner basically getting up there and sewering herself, which is exactly what she did in that meeting earlier this week. And now you get it to a point where you're really going to hit Hockey Canada where it hurts. And that's the sad part about it, is that it's the money, not the actual allegations or the systemic problems within Hockey Canada that's kind of led to this, that's led to a couple of funds created to kind of pay off these allegations and make them go away, sweep them under the rug, that sort of thing. But hey, at least we're here now, and they're going to start having to deal with it. The leadership group cannot survive losing your biggest sponsors. That's the biggest thing. You can't lose Tim Hortons and TELUS and Canadian Tire, which is pulled out completely. Let's not forget that they're the ones that have pulled out absolutely completely. It's not a pause. There's none of this. And they're one of the biggest international sponsors of Hockey Canada. As much as it's annoying that it's had to get to this point for Hockey Canada and probably, essentially their management and the board and all that eventually, to kind of get to this point. I suppose it's better late than never, right? I mean, that's the kind of the double-edged sword of this that kind of sucks, is that it's had to take this long and all that. But, you know, the leadership group just can't survive this sort of thing. You're losing the only thing that keeps you kind of going, other than, you know, for, federal funding, which is also on pause right now. So if you're not getting that, and you know, full credit to most of these, I think all of them have either said they'll still support Paralympic hockey, women's hockey. You know, those shouldn't be touched. There's no issues with those, and they need to prop up those as well. And full credit to Canadian Tire too for the Sheldon Kennedy stuff. You know, moving some of the funds into that sort of thing. That's a big deal. But yeah, like, you know, a day of reckoning, perhaps a week of reckoning. You know, every time that Hockey Canada gets up in front of somebody to speak about this, they put their foot and then their other foot in their mouth, right? It's both feet in mouth when they do it. I mean, Andrea Skinner even said, one of the quotes that she was quoted as saying was, you know, I hadn't had a lot of time to prepare for this. What do you mean? Like, this is your big, like, this is what's going to make or break, you know, how Hockey Canada kind of comes out of this. And, you know, you had Justin Trudeau today talking about creating something called Canada Hockey instead, just essentially saying you got to burn it to the ground and then
Well, I guess that's my question for you, Scott. I mean,
yeah,
if we fast forward 365 days and have this conversation on August 6th of 2023, what does the national governing body of hockey in this country look like? Does Hockey Canada still exist? I can't help but think, and again, I say this as someone that worked there, has a great knowledge of how things work. This was essentially like a professional team. I mean, everything about it, the sponsorship dollars, the way that it was run, was like Canada's 8th professional team.
Yeah.
And going forward, I think the priority, first and foremost, will be make sure that all of these other programs, but I mean, there are thousands and thousands of people that are playing the game that will be affected by this. And I mean, hockey is not going to stop. The rinks are still going to be on. The lights will still be on at the rinks. But I really do wonder about the future of the World Junior program and the future of the World Junior tournament, because let's face it, this is a Canadian-made event. You know, the under 18s don't get that same sort of thing. And the one major sponsor and partner of Hockey Canada that has not really said anything right now is, of course, TSN. And TSN is a national partner of Hockey Canada, has been a huge part of everything that they've done. Many people, myself included, almost give TSN the credit for turning the World Juniors into what it is. And I'm going to be fascinated to see what this event in Halifax looks like. And obviously what happens to this national governing body, as well as all the provincial levels right now, which I'm sure at some point have been somewhat supporting what they've been told are happening, but it hasn't really happened. And now we're seeing the rubber hit the road. Yeah,
I mean, I agree. I you know, to pick up on that TSM point, I thought it was kind of telling during the summer one where they didn't really say much about it either. And you know, that's the part that bothers me too a little bit, is that, like, to get change, like, it's got to be a collective effort. And so when you see a bunch of sponsors pulling out, I know TSN, this is their cash cow right now, right? They don't have the NHL stuff. They don't have the Blue Jays. You know, they have some regional NHL stuff, obviously, but, like, you know, the World Juniors is their thing. They make it as big as you said it was, you know, all that stuff. But, like, at what point do you just have to take a stand? You know, like, you don't want to be the ones looking at, you know, on the wrong side of history here. And I think, you know, for part of this, TSN has kind of looked like that, right? It's like, you know, if they lose that, well, whatever. I mean, you know, is Sportsnet going to just, you know, slide right in and take over, you know, the stuff with the climate that we're in? I don't know. I mean, at least, you know, threaten not to broadcast the games if something doesn't. Like, I mean, we're at a point now that change is probably going to happen. Like, again, I don't think you can deny the events of this week, and especially the sponsors pulling out and say, well, we're just going to stay the course if you're Hockey Canada. Everybody's essentially calling for the same thing. Everybody outside of Hockey Canada is pulling in the same direction here. Change needs to happen. So, I mean, what would, I don't think it would be a problem for TSN to threaten that we're not going to broadcast the games. I mean, I don't know what legal ramifications. I'm not a lawyer. I know there's all that kind of stuff, but at the same time, I mean, you got to stand for something here. And TSN's kind of walked the rope, and I don't know. I don't like it. But to answer your question about what it looks like in a year, ideally, I hope it looks like guys like Greg Yahui and Sheldon Kennedy are on that board, and there's real people, women on the board that are looking at this, and people that deal like professionals with sexual abuse and that sort of thing. Like, the board is made up of more than just the hockey minds and that sort of thing, but it's made up of people that will ensure that this doesn't happen again, and it doesn't keep happening, and that hockey culture does indeed change. Like, I think that's what I hope it looks like, because I don't think you're going to ruin the World Junior program or Canada's place in hockey. I don't think that has to happen. But the longer you drag this out and that sort of thing, maybe it does. It's just a distraction, right? I mean, and you don't want to stop kind of the momentum of it and the Canadian program, because there's a lot of innocent kids in this too. I mean, let's not forget. Like, I mean, there's a lot of people that are affected, like you said. I mean, that don't need to be affected by this, but this change just has to happen. It's got to come, and then they got to figure out kind of what it's going to look like from there. But it has to have safeguards this time. It can't just be what it has been. There's got to be oversight from somebody other than Hockey Canada. So you can't have these funds that are just kind of secretive and all that stuff. It's got to be a very transparent organization going forward. And I think it's not what it should look like, what it has to kind of look like, I think, in the end.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, when we're talking about the games being broadcast, I mean, the biggest reason for the broadcast, I mean, there's a lot of people watching,
sure, but
they created a product that all the sponsors wanted to be involved in, and that's why they were getting the millions of dollars. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, there's nobody watching the sledge hockey broadcast. There's very little in international women's hockey, and although that is really improved and it's gotten bigger, I mean, unless it's Canada, USA, that's what these sponsors were paying for right now. And, if they don't want to be involved in it anymore, even in an event that'll be here in Canada, in Halifax, it will force change, whether it's who's running it or, as Trudeau mentioned today, potentially an entirely new governing body for the sport in the country. Scott Billeck's with us from the Winnipeg Sun. If you have comments on Hockey Canada, hit us up in the comments. Always enjoy hearing feedback from you folks here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. And again, if you're listening to the podcast, you can tweet at us at Sports Talk WPG, or get to the YouTube channel and in the comments after the fact, let us know your thoughts on it. Back to the Jets, though.
Yeah.
Interesting game last night. First off, it was wild seeing Huberdeau wearing number 10, Nazem Kadri wearing number 91. And overall, I mean, I can't talk about that game without talking about the brilliant play of Big Save Dave. I mean, he really was the star last night. But for all the talk about Brad Lambert and the excitement of the young players going in, it was the big boys up front in that new look top line featuring Nikolai Ehlers, Connor, and Scheifele that really had an impact last night. And Sam Gagner, Remo called him the new Wellwood. And he had some serious hands. Great play on the power play. A lot to like about last night's 5-0 win from a Winnipeg side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I get that it's preseason, and I understand that. But I mean, if you look at, you showed Daryl Sutter's comments earlier. I don't think Calgary came into that game, thinking, oh, this is just a preseason one-off that doesn't matter. They brought their full roster, expecting a lot better than they got last night, and they got trampled by the Jets, especially in that second period. I thought the first period was a little bit even, but that second period, the Jets just got on a roll. The two quick power play goals, back to back with Scheifele, or with Connor and Scheifele. Obviously, Sam Gagner. I mean, what a display last night. I mean, here's a guy that you can easily see on the power play. Just the vision. I mean, and look, the filthy goal to Connor, the give and go, the backhanded sauce that was just enough off the ice to make the stick. But before that, he was feeding it out front to Scheifele, who got a couple whacks at it too. Don't forget that either. I mean, Sam Gagner had his fingerprints kind of all over that power play, and so. It's interesting to see what Sam Gagner can do on the fourth line, because I think that fourth line is a bit of a lock at this point. That's what you're going to see. But if he's kind of a weapon on the power play, I mean, all the power to the Jets on that, because I think it works really well. And let's not forget, Sam Gagner is a former first round pick. I mean, he knows how to play hockey. He's just been he hasn't had that kind of career that I mean, a lot of people would have thought back in I think it was 2007 when he was drafted. But yeah, I thought it was a really good game, as you said, for the vets. A different game for the youth. I think Brad Lambert got found out a little bit there. He wasn't able to turn the corner. Remember him going up against Noah Hannafin, and Noah Hannafin was like, no, this isn't kind of how it works. And so he wasn't able to kind of do those things that he had done, previously against, junior and AHL players in some of the other games. It also kind of be expected, right? This is Brad Lambert's first game against NHL competition, and he's going to have to figure that out, right? But, you listen to Rick Bowness after, and you played the clip, the Doobie, the wheels, that are going to be back on that line, and the cements, in my mind now. I was just as hopeful as others, that maybe Lambert would see maybe up to 9 games once he signs an ELC. That hasn't happened yet. Obviously with the ELC, doesn't seem like it'll happen. But I think Brad Lambert has come in, and, I think that maybe the biggest thing for the Jets is they got maybe a top 10 pick at 30th, right? A lot of people said prior to last season, going into like the preseason draft rankings, that Brad Lambert was 2 or 3 in the draft, right? Even before, I mean, he obviously had a tough season in Liga, and it was different at the World Juniors because he was asked to play kind of a grinding role instead of that role that he played, even with the Jets in training camp, where it was very offensive and that sort of thing. So I think the future is bright for Brad Lambert, and I don't think sending him back to junior is the right call anymore. I barely kind of thought it was to begin with, just kind of based on his skill set. He would dominate junior, and I don't think the confidence is an issue. I think you saw that confidence wasn't an issue for Brad Lambert. I think he'll do well with the Moose, and possibly could be back up. Who knows? If he can learn this game a little different in the AHL, I mean, he may be back up.
Well, I'm totally with you on that, Scott. And listen, there's a couple of options. I mean, let's say, you are assuming he's going to play the majority of the season in the American Hockey League.
Yeah.
I think it makes all the sense in the world to start him there, to give him a few months to, get his feet under him in the North American style of game, playing in a very, very good league against guys that are on the bubble of the National Hockey League, and be there later on if need be. I mean, I could see a call up. And listen, if there's injuries like a Cole Perfetti or somebody in the top 6, I think he might be a guy that's shown enough that he could come in spot duty and give an opportunity. And I think that he'll be a more advanced player in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months. And don't rule out Brad Lambert getting some NHL time. I think, though, it makes more sense to maybe have that later on in the season. And heck, if he can have a great year and really prepare himself, maybe he's an option come playoff time if the team can get to that point. There's a lot of ifs and a lot of games and a lot of time in between, but it really does seem like that's the most logical route that's best for the organization, and I think will certainly be best for the player.
Yeah, and that's full credit. I mean, Brad Lambert can feel good about his training camp, right? If he goes to the AHL, because I think a lot of people thought he would be with Seattle this year, right? Bad year in Liga, didn't have a good World Juniors, as I said earlier. I think a lot of people thought he'd be going to junior, and I don't think Brad Lambert wanted that. And I'm wondering if one of the possible reasons why he hadn't signed yet was, maybe he wanted to go back to Finland instead of playing, junior here, and figured that's a better route. We saw that with Ville Heinola before. It's just kind of one of those things where, if they're not, well, Ville was, either way. Part of it, though, to me is just, I think that Brad Lambert has acquitted himself well with the Jets, and he deserves to play in the AHL and then see where it goes. And I think you're exactly bang on with that. I think it's a little murky, and probably talk a little bit about the D here. I'm still unsure. I'm on the fence with this whole thing because nobody's really stood out. I mean, again, people are going to look at the mistakes from Ville Heinola last night, some of the giveaways and that sort of thing. But I also thought he fed Adam Lowry a sure goal, and Lowry just kind of ricocheted off his skate, and that was it. Was it too crispy of a pass? I don't know. I mean, that's a NHL pass from Heinola in front there. Set up from Brad Lambert, we should say, on that to get it to Heinola. But I think they're going to go with Sandberg and Pionk. I mean, it's just kind of the gut feeling that I get. I think Kovacevic and Stanley are going to be. There you go. You kind of have it there on the screen. It's just, to me, I think they don't want to lose Kovacevic or Stanley on waivers, so they're the two defensemen that are kind of the scratches to start. I don't think that Jansen Harkins has done enough to win the job, and I think the fact that Morgan Barron's going to play again tomorrow night, according to Rick Bowness, is good for Morgan Barron's chances of possibly playing on that third line with Lowry and Appleton. Dominic Tonnato, what a head fake last night, right? I mean, that was a hell of a goal. What a head fake. But again, I'm just wondering if, does Morgan Barron bring more than Dominic Tonnato? Again, like I said, I think that fourth line is sewn up. I think Manalainen had another, decent game last night. I thought, even him kind of almost dropping the gloves with Nikita Zadorov is something that they'll want to see from a fourth line guy like that. Not afraid to kind of, be physical and kind of stick up for teammates.
Well, and speaking of that, listen, and I'm not a big fighting guy, and I mean, it's not a huge part of the game right now. But I think we did see, the Jets in that third period essentially get sort of pushed around by a pissed off Flames team. And you never want to see a star player like Scheifele take one in the chops from, a guy like Zadorov. Yep. And I'll say this, I couldn't help but think that was a real missed opportunity for Logan Stanley to maybe go in and show, because I mean, you're looking around on the ice and a bunch of those things happen. You got Perfetti on the ice and Brad Lambert, and needless to say, that's not what you want to see happen. And I was sort of thinking that, maybe somebody, i.e. Stan, who I think could help his case immensely by showing the new coaching staff he was there, and that wasn't the case. Although I didn't think he had a bad game last night, but I'm with you. I mean, as I said, we've been describing it as the triple threat ladder match. No one got to the top of the ladder and grabbed the contract off the pole right now, and it still is somewhat. I'm actually sort of leaning Philly right now, and I still think, I guess it depends on if they like, and I do think some of the guys up front, are capable of doing more PK. Because I think the penalty killing role will be important for one of those players. But to be honest, with what he adds on, offensively, the thing is he's just got to keep some of those mistakes to a minimum. I know he's been spending a bit of time in the penalty box. There's been a few pizzas, and that's a tough thing to get over when you're trying to crack a roster and show that you belong and you can play consistently. But to me, everything's still on the table going into this final game, and it will be very interested. And if it was all being the same, if everybody was waiver exempt, I think Philly's certainly there. It might give them the luxury of sort of seeing how things work out over the course of the next week or so, the first month or so of the season. And no guarantee everyone's going to be healthy. In fact, highly likely that won't be the case. So I think we will be seeing a lot of Ville Heinola this week. Hey, just before we run, because we've got Brandon Rewucki warming up the rubber arm in the bullpen. What do you have coming up over the next few days? Will you be out in Banff lurking around, seeing what's going on?
Oh, yeah.
What do you do? There's a bunch of team activities. Like, what are you guys going to be doing?
Practice
Media
only.
Activities?
Yeah, practice. Yeah, media activities. Yeah, in quotation marks. There's a few baseball games that hopefully we'll get to kind of watch. Obviously, I'm not the biggest Jays fan in the world, as you can tell by my hat, but should be a good series anyways. And anybody who's going to go up against the Yankees eventually, if the Blue Jays get there, I'm hoping that whoever the best team is will beat the Yankees down. So, no, but otherwise, we're going to Banff, Calgary tomorrow night for the final game, which inexplicably is not being broadcasted again. I think it's on the stream or whatever again, which
get the internet, man. It's available.
Exactly. I watch. So in Banff should be good. There's 3 practices out there, and probably see a lot more of what the team is wanting to do. I know they talked about Rick Bowness last night about power play and special teams and working on that. So kind of getting really into the nitty gritty. And I believe Bowness also said yesterday going to be some scrimmage work done out there too. So it should be some interesting times out in Banff, and hopefully some good extracurriculars among the 3 of us in the media that are also going. So
we'll look forward from your reports from Banff. Thanks for doing this, Scotty. Always great to have you on the program. We'll catch up next week heading into the home opener.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate it, Huss. Thanks.
All right, good stuff. Brandon Rewucki of Skates and Plates coming up. Just before we do that, again, Not AutoCorp question of the day. Who stood out? We've got this 3-way battle for the defensive spot. Let us know in the comments what you thought of last night's game and who your pick is. Of course, Not AutoCorp. they've been the Tesla leaders in Winnipeg for well over a decade, and right now have, I believe, upwards of 30 Teslas on the lot. If you've been thinking about moving to an electric vehicle, but would like to learn more about the technology and how things work as opposed to your traditional vehicle, the experts at Not Auto Corp can help you do exactly that with their Tesla Experience program. My guy Dre sent over some great picks of the week. 2019 Volvo XC60 R design, a 2018 Audi Q5 Technic Quattro, 2017 Jaguar F-Pace, just a few of the amazing vehicles available at Not Auto Corp. Pop down and see him at Waverly and McGillivray. Why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Not team? Find out more online on Not and the Winnipeg Car Lab at not.ca. Well, we might have to hold off on those Brad Lambert jerseys for a little bit, but certainly a lot of excitement going into next week's home opener, and no better place to get ready for both your Jets opener and the Bombers push for another Grey Cup than Royal Sports over at 750 Pembina Highway. They've been the merchandise leaders in town for years in Winnipeg and have the best selection maybe anywhere of merchandise from all the major sports leagues, including the Blue Jays now getting ready for postseason baseball starting tomorrow, and of course Canada Soccer heading to the World Cup next month. Find out more, and in addition, with hockey season starting, for 40 years, Royal Sports has been the hockey superstore with the best selection of equipment, gear, right down to skate sharpening by the experts. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway, and of course on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina. Make sure to follow them for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. Tomorrow's the day. Remo and I get to show off the new duds because it's suit day on Friday from our friends at F Apparel. I can't wait to show it off, folks. Some neat features of my suit. And listen, the entire process going down and getting a custom suit starting at $400 at F Apparel was an absolute breeze. Andrew and his great staff took me through, showed me the different styles I could choose from, different fabrics, colors, got that set up, got measured up, and then a few weeks later had a great suit, picked up a few accessories, which they have it all, and easy peasy done, and now looking great just in time for the change of the seasons and heading into the holidays. And of course, if you've got a wedding coming up, talk to the guys about a 15% discount for all the squad when you get your suits for the wedding at F Apparel. F Apparel, 190 Smith Street downtown, and online at F. That's EPHapparel.com. All right, let's get to it and welcome in our guy, Brandon Rewucki from Skates and Plates. Lots to chop up after last night's 5-0 win over Calgary, heading into the final preseason game and a little team building out in Banff. B, what's going on? How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How's it going?
Good. You know what? I was saying yesterday, I was really usually I'm not huge on preseason hockey. But I don't know whether it is just a new sheriff in town with Rick Bowness, so many interesting things around the club, things that, we were expecting and hoping to be different, as well as some young players sort of emerging on the scene. This has been maybe the most interesting preseason I can remember in a long time for the Winnipeg Jets and people that follow the club.
Sure. Maybe. I don't know. I guess I think maybe the biggest thing would be the bonus positivity boost. And maybe that's permeating throughout, the dressing room of the fan base right now. Watching last night's game, kind of tune into Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power by midway through the second period point. Like, I don't know. It's just.
Oh, you missed out then. You missed out. The big save. Dave show. The triple threat ladder match, contract on a pole between Ville Heinola, Dylan Sandberg, and Logan Stanley. And of course, I'll say this, that top line, we saw glimpses of why these players are, we've wanted to see this happen for a while and what Nikolai Ehlers, but I'll tell you what, the guy that maybe stood out the most that was unexpected was Sam Gagner and what he was able to do on the power play. I mean, that dish to Kyle Connor and the move that he made, I believe it was on Rasmus Anderson to get that puck to Kyle Connor in a place where he's scoring 99 times out of 100 was interesting. And that's a wrinkle that might give Brad Lauer some real options when it comes to personnel and maybe even a more potent second power play unit, depending on where they put Sam Gagner amongst those two units.
It's always been funny to me how throughout essentially hockey history, the fourth line and the third defense pair are basically primarily used for penalty killers. Like that's kind of where they'll play a little bit 5-on-5, but that's where we stash away our PK specialists. But nobody's really ever thought to do that with the power play, which is just as if, maybe more important in some cases, especially with the talent the Jets have. And Sam Gagner made it look like it was 2006 again last night. He was a ton of fun to watch. And I love watching guys like him play because they make really difficult plays and passes look super easy. Like you almost like, hey, we could slot anybody in there and they'll pass. But he's got a really good knack of both, finding the seams, but then delivering, especially when it's a saucer pass, through a couple sticks, maybe in between some skates, and then right onto the tape of either an Ehlers or a Scheifele or a Connor, right? Like all those guys need is some service in and around them, and the puck is more than likely not to end up in the back of the net. So it's something that I've always thought about for a while, and we haven't really gotten to see a ton of it because Gagner's played such limited time this preseason. But yeah, talk about staking your claim to a roster spot pretty quickly there. He's not going to kill penalties. There's no doubt about that. But man, I don't even know if PP2, I think he can be a serious weapon on the first power play.
Well, the funny thing is, and who knows, maybe this was a bit of an eye-opener yesterday. I think we all expected that Dubois would be kind of that fifth guy. He wasn't in the lineup yesterday. We've seen Wheeler already on that second unit. There's a good chance Dubois and Wheeler are going to be playing together for the majority of the time as a line. If all of a sudden Gagner fits in well and can be productive on that first power play unit, he's not going to be playing anywhere close to the ice time as the rest of the players on there. So you would think that he'll usually be ready and available for it. It might make that second power play unit that I think people were wondering how it would look even more powerful if Gagner can find a home there. Either way, I think we're going to see Gagner have an impact on one of those two power play units when the season gets going next Friday.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go with it too, right? Like, what's the worst case scenario? He runs the second power play from the half wall and you kind of let him. And at that point too, depending on where the Jets want to put Wheeler on the second power play unit, you could potentially have, two high-end elite power play playmakers on each side of the wall there and make things really difficult for the opposition when the second power play unit gets out there. So yeah, pretty damn impressive performance from Mr. Gagner. And even too, look, he's not going to be the 5-on-5 player he was early on in his career, but he's going to give guys like David Gustafsson, guys like Saku Menelainen, maybe a Harkins and a Toninato, depending on injury and stuff like that. He's going to give them a few more opportunities offensively as well, where, hey, you put your stick down in front of the net there, and you might get yourself a tap. And I'm kind of intrigued too to see, just because we know specifically with David Gustafsson how solid defensively he is as a youngster. Wouldn't mind seeing Gagner try to untap some of the offensive potential that the second round pick has.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think this fourth line looks so different than most of the fourth lines we've seen in the past. I guess here's the question. Is Morgan Barron, do you think he gets game one playing with Appleton and Lowry? And if that's the case, let's just assume that Dominic Toninato is a 13th forward. Harkins or Menelainen on line number 4? Has Menelainen done enough to make that opening day roster? And where does that leave Harkins if the answer is yes?
On waivers, right? It's the tough battle, and he was kind of on the bubble coming in. Maybe you could say had a slight chance at the third line left wing spot, but if you're going strictly off what we saw in preseason here, I think it's a unanimous decision, is it not? That Menelainen, while he hasn't lit the score sheet on fire or anything like that, he's been much more impactful than Jansen Harkins has given the same minutes. So I think it's for me a pretty easy decision here for the Jets. I think Morgan Barron, with what he had shown last year as well, in the last dozen or so games with the Jets, that he earned a chance to be. I like him on the third line. I think that's a nice spot for him there with Lowry and Appleton. And I think, being a quote unquote checking line, there's not as much of a concern with how his offensive game is going to turn out. But I think he brings more offensive punch than Jansen Harkins would. And then, yeah, at that point, to me, Menelainen kind of checks off all the boxes you want from a fourth liner, right? Like, he's a big ass dude. He can go out there and be physical. He's got a bit of a scoring touch. or at least he's got some offensive skills to potentially pot a couple. You know, there was a lot of hope for Jansen Harkins 2-3 years ago after having a couple good seasons with the Moose. And if you look at his 100 or so games at the NHL level, you know, he hasn't popped off enough at either end of the ice. Offensively, it hasn't worked out for him so far, and he's been a bit of a net negative for the team in his game so far. So it's unfortunate, but if you look at the guys that are ahead of them that you mentioned there, Barron, Menelainen, and Dominic Toninato, I think you got to go with those three, and you run the risk of losing Jansen Harkins on waivers.
Hey, by the way, well over 450 in chat right now. Folks, if you haven't already, make sure you've hit that red subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. It's completely free. Helps us grow the channel. And if you're unable to see the show when it's live, pop into YouTube and the freshest WST content will be there. And of course, you can also download the audio podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast. Just search Winnipeg Sports Talk and hit that subscribe button. We've got a poll, by the way. Remis has thrown a poll up in the chat right now, which essentially has been a huge topic of conversation in this battle for the 6th spot. Who will be in that opening day lineup? Dylan Samberg, Logan Stanley, Ville Heinola. Based on what we've seen so far, Brandon, how are you answering the WST poll? Who's getting that spot?
Yeah, it's the only thing anybody's been talking about for ever since the captaincy thing. That's been the main focus, right? And
well, then we talked about Brad Lambert nonstop for 4 days, but now we're back to, okay, who's playing defense in game number 1?
Good call by me. You know, not to brag or anything, but
not to Barry Horowitz yourself.
I'm just saying. You know, I did say keep an eye out on the kid. It's funny because to me, I think I look at this decision as who lost it the least. Because unfortunately, nobody went out there and grabbed it, right? Like it's not the same as you see Menelainen or even Lambert through his first, you know, like a bit of an off one for him last night. But before that, popping off the page, making a ton of positive plays. I think for me, I would give the edge to Dylan Samberg, and it's not overly based on much he did in the preseason. I think I'll put more stock into the fact that he performed really well playing beside Neil Pionk on a second pair role for the Jets in, 15 or so games last year. I think that gives him the edge, but honestly, it's not because of what he did during the exhibition schedule. It's so tough with Ville because I think he had the biggest highs of any defenseman that was on the bubble. I think power play, we talked about Sam Gagner. I think on the power play, that's his best chance at staking a spot inside the top 6 is that he would legitimately be a spark plug on the second power play unit. He's fantastic. You just tell he could step in right now and on most teams in the league run the second power play unit. He's really, really strong there, but there's a lot of valleys as well with the highs, and that's the tough part there. There's part of me that wants to say give it to Heinola and you deal with the bumps. You deal with some of the growing pains because you know that the potential is a little bit higher. But at the same point, I can understand a coaching staff looking at that and going, if it's pretty close between him and Samberg, and maybe Samberg's a little more steady and less error prone, why they might lean towards a guy that can maybe provide a more all-around game and then chip in on the penalty kill as well. But I would probably lean 54 for me. I think Samberg and Heinola clearly have a much higher ceiling than what Logan Stanley is able to bring for you inside that top 6. And I wish there would have been a little less negativity in terms of some of the mistakes from Heinola's side of the game, but he's close. And honestly, it's too bad that there's not a couple of spots open because I think it would be great for Samberg and Heinola to play together as this team's third pair. And just kind of, you can give them sheltered minutes. They don't have to face the toughest competition. And you deal with their growing pains, but you do it together. You allow them to develop beside each other. And then maybe that's a pair that could blossom into a second unit for you. It's just tough that, with neither one of them playing at their absolute peak, that I can understand why management wouldn't move out a veteran defenseman to give them both a shot.
We're going to see that pairing at some point, playing regularly in the National Hockey League. When that comes, I guess, remains to be seen. Hey, we've got a little bit of breaking news. The Jets have just put out a release regarding Mikhail Burden. and I'm just going to read it for you. The Winnipeg Jets announced today that goaltender Michael Burden, per the advice and recommendation of the NHLPA Substance Abuse and Behavioral Health Program, will not remain with the club for the 22-23 NHL season. The rights of the club and player will be consistent with the treatment of a suspended player, so he will not be paid by the club and his salary will not count against the salary cap. As part of an agreement between the club, NHLPA, NHL, and player, Burden will be permitted to sign a 1-year contract to play outside of North America for the 2022-23 season. That's a weird release. I mean, that listen, I'm just reading this like you are and hearing it for the first time. I cannot remember a release like that. We knew it was sort of a weird situation with Burden, where he was fitting in, what his future was. And I said on this show, especially considering what's happened in Russia right now, I'll believe it when I see Burden here in North America. Well, he showed up. He was there in camp. And then he was away from the team for a little bit. I mean, what do you make of this, Brandon? I mean, I guess in all likelihood, I think the long and short of it is we've seen the end of Mikhail Burden in Winnipeg with the Winnipeg Jets, but an interesting arrangement and very interesting wording as far as how this has come to be and essentially allowing him to go back. But once you add in the behavioral health and the substance abuse program, it almost gives you more questions than answers, other than knowing what his immediate future is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my only take on it is I hope he's okay. I hope he's doing all right. There's just no information all camp long. There's been nothing other than he's just essentially going to be away from the team for some time here. So yeah, I don't really I can't really give you a substantive breakdown of what's going on there, but you just, like you said, you see the words substance abuse and behavioral health and all that, and just hope the kid's doing all right. And I mean, I guess in terms of the organizational outlook on this, a bit of a positive, and that Arvid Holm comes over here and he showed himself pretty well in his brief action during the exhibition slate here. So he's going to get a ton of playing time down there with the Moose. But yeah, just hoping for the best for Mikhail Burden.
Yeah, and I mean, I had expected that Burden probably they would find somewhere else for him to play this year. I mean, I know there's some people saying, oh, that's another prospect lost. I mean, hey, listen, the guy's been in the system for a long time. He's super fun to watch. And I mean, when he goes out of his net, it's must-see TV. The problem was last year, he didn't stop enough pucks. And I don't think that there was the confidence that he was going to be the next one. And with limited playing time and opportunity to develop these young goaltenders, Oskari Salonen, the Finn, and Arvid Holm seem to be the guys that the Winnipeg Jets are investing in. I expected them to be the Moose guys, but just an unfortunate end for Mikhail Burden based on what we've just learned. Brandon Rewucki of Skates and Plates with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Brandon, big picture, and we're going to talk to Pierre-Luc Dubois about this in a couple minutes about the structural change. When you look at the Winnipeg Jets, just for instance, last game, now that they have a more regular roster, what have you seen that stands out different from the way that this team played under Paul Maurice and in the second half of last season under Dave Lowry?
Yeah, I think specifically, I wanted to wait until the past game against Calgary because look, especially for the veterans, they don't give a number two about the first handful of preseason games. It's really last night's and then the final one where it's like, okay, we've got to ramp it up here and get ready for the regular season. Honestly, what stood out to me the most in the Calgary game was that Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor were back checking their asses off. That's what stood out to me, and I was blown away by some of the effort that Scheifele skated harder in that game against Calgary than he did all of last regular season.
Well, you know what, Brandon? I mean, and this goes back to the first game and the very pointed comments from Rick Bowness. It sounds like they listened. Yeah. Well, I went through this earlier on, but I mean, you go through the average shift length, which in that game was pushing a minute, and of course had the famous 55-second shift line after that first game. Last night, every player on the Winnipeg Jets had a 45-second or less average shift time. And Scheifele, Connor, and Ehlers were right in the midst. Connor, 42, Scheifele, 44, Ehlers, 41. message received by those guys, and that is a great sign going into the season that, some of these things that Rick Bowness is preaching seems to be resonating, and it starts with your most important players. The example that those guys set last night, I think, bodes very well to see some significant change once we get to the real thing next week.
Yeah, and there were some really interesting comments to kind of mirror this from John Tortorella today. I don't know if you saw them. I assume it was after he finished vomiting watching the Flyers practice once again. But he went on. They were asking about systems and with new coaches coming in, this and that. How long is it going to take for players to adjust? And he has said, to paraphrase massively here, essentially said, you know what? Hockey players nowadays know how to play. Like there's very little systemic changes ultimately that can happen from team to team. Sure, there's man-to-man to zone defense inside your own. Sure, there's little nuances with a neutral zone attack, but for the most part, everything is pretty much along the same lines. But a coach's main job is to essentially instill will and structure into his team. And I just thought that was really interesting in seeing that game specifically last night against the Calgary Flames, where you do wonder if, look, there were certain structural errors last year and last 2-3 years that were just they just can't happen at this level of professional hockey. But you wonder how many of the Jets' problems are more along the mental side of things, and just bringing in somebody like Rick Bowness at this point to change the mindset and the outlook of this team. I wonder if that's going to maybe prove off to be the biggest dividend for the club, 40, 50, 60 games down the road. And I think that's a perfect example of that, where, like, if any one of the Jets veterans last night hit it back 90% instead of 100%, you wouldn't really notice it. It's whatever, it's preseason, nobody cares. But you're right, man. Like, if you're seeing 55 and 81 and up and down the line that they're not taking a shift off in preseason, then nobody else earns the right to do that as well. And that's the trickle-down effect that you're hoping for. And I think I like the positivity that's kind of surrounding the club right now. I'm going to wait until next week to kind of think about predictions-wise if I'm going to, put the Winnipeg Jets in the playoffs or not. But I'll give Rick Bowness a ton of credit in that he has done an outstanding job of making it a conversation piece, because I think he's doing a lot of the things right. And I think there is a lot of positive momentum pushing towards game one.
Well, and listen, I mean, just for a little bit more credit for Bones, I mean, the way he handled that first game and those habits that had crept in over years and addressed them very clearly to the players and then very clearly to anybody paying attention to the Winnipeg Jets, I really think was an important moment too. There's no BS from Rick Bowness. And again, maybe things will change. Maybe there'll be a different approach during the regular season. I certainly hope not, because I think the frankness and the honesty that he says publicly, I mean, he was very clear. I'm not saying anything to you guys that I haven't already said to them. And acknowledging, like, there was a lot of times where everything was protected, everything was guarded. They didn't really want to get any information. And I think in some ways that sort of created the ability for guys to get away without that level of accountability. And that's the word we talked about over and over again in the second half of last season, where it was. Listen, it's hard to completely change a culture overnight, and I'm sure there's still a ton of work to go. But what he's had to say and how that is showing in his most important players. I mean, Mark Scheifele can be the agent of change. He himself almost can be, worth a big, big turnaround in the Winnipeg Jets. But I think if he does that, you will have other players that really follow. And I mean, that's just nothing but good news for a team that absolutely needed to see, better buy-in, better effort, and better commitment to what the head coach has been saying. And I guess so far so good heading into the season. Yeah,
and it helps when your goalie stops all 37 shots he faces.
Big save, Dave.
Yeah, big save Dave is here, baby. We are back. I was there for the revenge game against the Flames. And you know what? Everyone, rightfully so, talks about Hellebuyck being the most important player for this team, and he is. He's a goalie that's going to play 60 or so games, and there's no doubt about that. But I think to what you're saying there, Mark Scheifele is the most important player for this team this upcoming season. And to be honest, Bones is putting a lot of his eggs in that basket, right? Like you're putting your three most dynamic offensive players all in the same line there. And he's essentially trying to recreate what he had in Robertson, Hintz, and Pavelski out there in Dallas, right? Where you're going to play a ton and you basically have to drive all of the offense for this club. Like there is a lot riding on that line to start the season here. And maybe that's where the positivity stems. And again, we'll see how they fare inside their own zone. And you're right, things can change really quickly. 10 games in, a couple of bounces don't go the Jets' way, and all of a sudden things can go from sunshine to clouds pretty quickly here. But I think rightfully so, there's a lot of optimism about what that top line can do offensively. And especially seeing how high Nikolai Ehlers' production might skyrocket here, given some time, some increased time on the top line, some number one power play minutes. I think that's probably your biggest reason for optimism right now surrounding the Jets, in all honesty, is the fact that their top line it's going to score a hell of a ton of goals, and it's just going to be up to see how much they can keep out of it at their own end to see if they're going to creep up with the Dallases and the St. Louises and the Nashvilles.
By the way, here's just a little bit from Billeck, who was just on with us. Billeck just tweeted this out. Just to clear up any confusion on the wording of Mikhail Burden's situation, I'm told there are no substance abuse issues of any kind involved. Burden wishes to be close to home at the moment, NHL Jets. So anyways, that's good for him personally. And as we discussed, I mean, I think that sort of ship had sailed on Burden. He was going to be the number 3 guy in that 3-man unit for the Moose, and this is going to be good for the Finn and Arvid Holm to be able to play going forward. Brandon, heading into the just quickly, what do you think of Calgary? Like, what are your expectations of Calgary? I mean, they were so good last year. Obviously, it didn't end the way they wanted to. They've had such significant change on their roster at the most important spots. Are they going to be? Can they be as good as they were last year? And what are the expectations for Kadri, Huberdeau, and of course Mackenzie Weegar, who sometimes gets forgotten but might be the key to it all?
Yeah, I think for me in the Pacific, there's a clear-cut top 3. I'm not sure how they're going to play out just yet. I think Calgary, Edmonton, and people might not like this, but I think Vegas is going to be back in a big way this year. To me, that's the class of the Pacific, and I think Calgary belongs in there. I don't know if they're going to be as good as they were last year, but they don't necessarily have to be either, right? Like it didn't really matter against Edmonton that they put up 110 points or whatever they did. It's just, get into the dance and see what happens. I think they're going to be a much more defensively stingy team, but I do think they're going to struggle to score as much as they did last year. Kadri's a great 2C. There's no doubt about that. He's not putting up 90 points again this year. If he gives you kind of like he has most of his career, like 60 points, nothing wrong with that, but that's not necessarily what they're expecting out of that spot there. And I'm not sold on Jonathan Huberdeau necessarily matching the production that both he had last year and that Johnny Gaudreau also provided for the Calgary Flames.
He's the best passer that they've ever had in Calgary, according to Daryl Sutter. Let's not forget about that. And not to mention, Tyler Toffoli's also been a guy that's won cups and been on long playoff runs, unlike somebody that's now in the Florida Panthers system. The Sutter quotes in the preseason have been absolutely amazing. I cannot get enough of him right now.
I would take Johnny Gaudreau over Johnny Huberdeau, passing or no passing. So I guess it doesn't really matter all that much. But look, Sutter's a hell of a coach. They've got a top 5 goalie. They've got one of, if not the best D-corps, maybe behind Colorado, one of the best D-corps in the NHL, and a solid forward group. Like that's going to take you a long way. I would call them a playoff lock. I think I'd feel pretty confident about that. I don't think they're going to run away with the division the same way that they did last year. I think Edmonton's going to be right there with them. And I do think Vegas is going to bounce back in a pretty significant way this season. The one team I have absolutely no idea which direction they're going to go is actually the LA Kings. That's a team that I think could miss the playoffs, or if Quinton Byfield figures it out, they could certainly go ahead and win the division. I just don't have a good read on them just yet, but I think Calgary will be just fine. Just fine. Like 100 points, fine.
The funny thing is about Vegas, and I'm sort of with you. I mean, I'm a big Jack Eichel guy. I think he I mean, if he can rebound and be the guy they thought they were getting from Buffalo, that's big. I mean, they need to have a healthy Mark Stone.
Yeah.
But I have major questions about who the hell is going to be stopping the puck there right now. I mean, they got what's his name from
Aiden
San
Hill.
Jose, Aiden Hill. He's going to be in the mix. They've got Logan Thompson. They've got Hutch. And they've got Laurent Brossoit, who they weren't sure whether he was going to be there at the start of the year. I think he will be, but they're going to need him, especially in that division, going up against some of those teams, particularly Edmonton and Calgary. They're going to need somebody to step up, and I'm sure that they're hoping that it's Aiden Hill. But, I mean, to me, that is a major question mark for Vegas.
But here's the thing with Vegas. I think people kind of skate over this because everybody hates them. No, there are very few people that like the Golden Knights, and some of the things they do, like hockey karma-wise, I kind of get it. But last year was like the ultimate Murphy's Law year for them. Like, literally everything went wrong. And I mean, Mark Stone shouldn't have been playing the last month of the season. I mean, he could barely skate up and down it was really tough watching him play. And if he's back fully healthy, you're talking about one of the 5 best wingers on the planet at both ends of the ice. And I think Jack Eichel's going to be a lot better too. Like he parachutes in midway through the year after having a pretty significant neck surgery, right? And he was still okay for them. But when Murphy's Law, everything bad happened to them, they were right into the playoff mix until the last game of the season, essentially. I think it was 2 games left. They played Dallas and ended up losing that one. And that's with everything going wrong. If they just get a little bit to go right for them, if they stay a little healthier, I think Logan Thompson's fine as a goalie, right? Like if they get average goaltending, they've got a pretty good defense group. They've got 2 number 1 defensemen. They've got a really deep forward core, even with losing Pacioretty for nothing, right? Like I do kind of like that they've split the misfits on all 3 different lines for them there. I think Vegas is going to be just fine, and I think really everyone's talking about the losses they had this offseason. I think they made one of the most significant moves this entire offseason, and that was bringing in Bruce Cassidy. I think Bruce Cassidy's a top 5 coach of the NHL, and I think that alone is going to be a big, big boost for them. And I'll give you a little spoiler to my prediction episode. I think Vegas is going to win the Pacific Division this year. I think they're going to be a really, really tough outcome playoff time as well.
Well, Jets are going to see them a couple times in October, I believe. So we'll see how that prediction looks early on in the season when our Jets go head-to-head with the Vegas Golden Knights. Brandon, awesome stuff. Fill people in on what's cooking on skates and plates heading into the weekend.
Yeah, episode coming out tomorrow, just breaking down the preseason coming out as a whole. And then Tuesday is going to be prediction time. That'll be the big prediction episode before we get ready for the regular season. I'm jacked up, man. I'm ready to go. I'm not a preseason guy. I did my best, but I'm ready for the real thing to get underway here. So let's hit the fast forward button until next Friday.
You know what? I had no idea, but the Rangers coming in here for the Jets home opener and first game on Friday. It's going to be the Rangers' 3rd game of the season.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. So a little extra work, and I guess that's why the team's going out to Banff for a little extra team building, because, of course, they'll have the time to do exactly that. Folks, subscribe to Skates and Plates wherever you're getting the Winnipeg Sports Talk podcast. Brandon, have a great one. We'll talk to you next week when things get going for real.
Enjoy the weekend, man. Talk soon.
Thanks so much. There's Brandon Rewucki. Make sure you're following on Twitter as well, at Brandon Rewucki. Of course, we got a Bomber game on Saturday as well. 6 p.m. start against the Elks, and that means the Princess Auto Tailgate Zone gets going at 4 p.m. The place to be before the game. $5 beers, $3.50 popping hot dogs, DJ Finesse spinning. Atmosphere there has just been phenomenal going into the last couple games, so let's keep it going, Bomber fans. We'll see you there at the Princess Auto Tailgate Zone. Of course, Princess Auto is the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, and you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. A big shout out to our friends at Culligan Water, the water experts for decades, 65 years family owned here in Winnipeg, and hydrating the province and the city. They've got it all. Water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, home systems, drinking water systems, and citywide water delivery services, as well as commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Pop down and see them at 1200 Sargent Avenue. 694-5180 is the number to call, or check out all the Culligan Man's products and services awaiting for you and your family at drinkculligan.com. I was mentioning the Bomber game. Another thing that'll be on tap at the Bomber game, of course, is Canadian Club, the official whiskey of the Blue and Gold. And it's not just Canadian Club and all the great Beam Suntory products that are available at the bars, but you can also get the Canadian Club and Ginger Ale, ready-to-drink premix cocktail. Just a phenomenal addition to the lineup from Canadian Club. And, of course, it's also available in 6-packs at your local beer store. But grab one at the game on Saturday and grab one the next time you're at your beer store or your local Manitoba liquor marts. And hey, we got Thursday night football tonight. We hit it on today's Lock Shop. If you want more insight and picks on tonight's game, you can find it there. Subscribe to the Lock Shop wherever you get your podcasts, or check out my Twitter or Dustin Nielsen's Twitter feed for the video edition. We got the Indianapolis Colts and the Denver Broncos, two disappointing teams so far. But I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter what matchup's on, because at Boston Pizza, the big game's on the big screen. BP Pizza flights available, and ice cold Bud Draft on special for $5 every game. And you can enter to win one of 2 grand prize trips for 2 for an NFL weekend in Vegas, including airfare, hotel, NFL game tickets, and a bonus NHL game. First trip coming up on the 11th to 13th of November. Raiders, Colts, Golden Knights, and Blues on Saturday night. Second trip is New Year's Eve weekend. Raiders and Niners, and the Knights and Preds on New Year's Eve. Watch the NFL and enter to win at any Winnipeg, Selkirk, Steinbach, Morden, and Portage Boston Pizza location. All right, we've had some great Jets chats with Scott Billeck and Brandon Rewucki so far. And now it's time to welcome in a very special guest to the program, Winnipeg Jets center, Pierre-Luc Dubois. Pierre-Luc, what's going on? Thanks for doing this.
No, thanks for having me.
What's been the atmosphere around camp? New coach, a number of new players, obviously many familiar faces. From your perspective, how's camp been, and what has the atmosphere been like around the squad as you get ready to start your 82-game journey in the regular season?
Yeah, it's been exciting. It's been a fun camp. Obviously, a lot of hard work and a lot of the learning and video and new systems, but all of exciting. I think whenever you have a new voice with new ideas and how this team can play and improve, everybody's excited about it and everybody's happy. And preseason is fun to get back into things, but with this last preseason game and then a few days regular season starts, the excitement level comes up.
Tell us about Coach Bones. What was your first impression for him, and how have you enjoyed working with him so far?
Yeah, I talked to a few times to him this summer, just quick calls about the season and all that. But to be able to start working with him officially here during camp, it's been great. Him and his whole coaching staff, whether it's video or communication on the ice, practices, even during games, it's been fun to work with them. They're very oriented around details, and they have clear and precise ideas of how we want to play and what kind of team we want to be. And, I think it's great, but, to have the details and visually see it sometimes, it helps a lot. So it's been great, and I'm sure, we still have a lot to learn and a lot to talk about, but so far so good.
He, from the outside looking in, he seems to have incredible energy and be a real positive person. Is that accurate? How would you characterize the personality of your new head coach?
Yeah, he shows up every day in a good mood, talks to everybody. I always ask you how you're doing, and stuff like that. So that's great. But, he says the door's always open, and I think it truly is. And as a player, it means a lot when you could talk to a coach and just have a conversation with him. He's been great with the video too of, he knows we have a lot to learn and we have all of his systems, and, there's going to be a lot of changes, but he's been great and staying patient with us, but also being very demanding. And I think it's going to lead well into the season.
Well, the structure and the changes, I think, are very interesting for fans, and even fans that, maybe haven't played the game or haven't coached, I think have seen, certainly in the games, an up-tempo pace. How different is this structure that Bones is putting in this year compared to what you and your team played last year? And what have been the keys maybe to making those changes, the things that you guys need to focus on the most?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of changes, but I think we want to play a lot faster. You look at how the game is nowadays, and the best teams, they just play so fast. The puck's from behind their net on a breakout, and they're on the forecheck. The puck's behind your net in 3 seconds. So there's a lot of components to that. The puck moves faster than players, so sometimes you don't need to come as low, and you don't need to support as close. You can just skate, and the puck will find you later on. We got to trust each other. Trust the defenseman will make plays. Trust that the wingers, they'll be in the right spots, and the centers too. So it's a lot of chemistry, building chemistry, getting used to the systems. It's a different mindset and way of playing the game. But I think once we all get it figured out, we can be a really dangerous and even annoying team to play against.
Well, it's funny you say annoying. You did your fair share of annoying players on the other team last year. I think you had, by far the most penalty minutes in your career. What got into you last season?
I don't know. Hopefully that doesn't happen again this year. But I like to be a guy that nobody wants to play against, and that's physical. That's in front of the net. That's defending teammates when the time comes. There's a lot of components to that, and hopefully the penalty minutes go down, but the intensity stays the same.
Well, to be honest, I say that complimentarily because I think you were so involved in the game last year, which at time that wasn't the case. Night in and night out for some of the guys, and I think that's what really made you a fan favorite last year with the way that you played, and obviously not so much of a favorite of opponents. And I'm sure you're quite happy with that. Pierre-Luc, going into this season so far, we've seen you play with Cole Perfetti and Blake Wheeler. What have you seen from Perfetti, and how exciting is it to be a center playing along with a young man with that sort of skill set and toolbox?
It's been fun. I played with him a bit last year before he got injured. We had a fun time there playing together. He's a good player, but I think above all, he's a good person, and he's a fun guy to be around. And it's been fun to see him, grow into the player he is now. And I know he's gonna keep growing and becoming an even better player. But he's so smart. He can pass the puck. He can shoot the puck. He can make plays, and he's got confidence, and the confidence will just keep growing as the season goes on, I'm sure. He works hard. We communicate well, and he's a fast learner. So I think if you put all those things together, he can become a really, really good player in this league, and he's already a good player. But I know, and he knows that there's a lot more to come from him.
You know what I mean? With him being such a young player, over on the right side, you've got longtime captain Blake Wheeler, who's done so much, is really the face of the franchise. I have to ask you, Pierre-Luc, one of the first things that happened prior to camp was the change in the leadership group, which was significant for the organization. From your perspective, what was it like, being in the room or being around the team when you heard that? And how did you and some of the other players react to, a very big change from what had been the norm around here for a long time?
Yeah, I think it came as a surprise to all of us. I don't know. I don't think a lot of guys expected it, or if any expected it. But Wheels, since I've been here, it's going into my third season here. Wheels has been great to me. He's been helpful from the moment I got here to now, and I'm sure even without being the captain, he'll still be helpful, and he'll still be a leader on this team. But I think, for the guys that have only had one captain in their career, it came as a shock, and it's not easy, and it wasn't easy for the team or for Wheels. But I think, for this team now on, we've talked about the great teams. They don't just have one or two leaders, the whole team leads, and everybody has a different role and everybody has a different job. But at the end of the day, we need the team's made of 22 individuals, and every individual has to do their job and has to be a leader in their own way. So it's obviously going to be a bit different, but we hope and we think that it can be a positive thing for the team. And Wheels is going to be, he doesn't need a C to be a leader and to be a good guy on this team. And, I'm sure that this year we'll see, some guys maybe even jump into new leadership roles, but I think it could be a good thing for this team moving forward.
Certainly, last year with the way that you played night in and night out, certainly on this program, we heard from many fans feeling that you were exerting that sort of leadership. Do you personally look at this as an opportunity maybe to take a bigger and more impactful role amongst the leadership group of the Winnipeg Jets?
How I see it, to be honest, is it's not an opportunity. I just see it as I just got to do my job again. I just got to do my job and help the team win. And, like I said, I don't think you need to have a letter on your jersey to be a leader. I think it's just doing the right things, having the right mindset, doing it every day, showing up and doing your job and trying to influence others and helping others into doing theirs too. I don't see it as an opportunity or anything like that. I just think, we got to do our job again. Even if we had 0 letters on our team and nobody had an assistant, nobody had a captain. You have to be a leader anyway. So for me this year, the mindset like that doesn't change. It's still about winning and helping this team in any way I can.
Pierre-Luc Dubois of the Winnipeg Jets, our guest here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Pierre-Luc, at the end of last season, not surprisingly, there was a lot of pissed off players after the year that that the team had. How would you characterize the attitude of this team going in? We've heard a number of players saying, somewhat of a chip on their shoulder, wanting to prove a lot of people wrong. Is that accurate? What do you feel about is the mentality of this team going into this upcoming season, considering what happened last campaign?
Yeah, well, obviously last year was a disappointing season in many ways. We knew what kind of team we had, and we also knew at the end of the season that we disappointed ourselves and disappointed a lot of people. But I think for us this year, they're long seasons. It's a long season, and I think for us it's going to be about proving ourselves right and not proving others wrong. We want to stay in that positive mindset of we know what kind of team we have in here, and nobody's more demanding towards us than us. The coaching staff, the players, everybody, this whole organization. We know what kind of team we have, and last year was not the year for us, and it was not. It did show what kind of team we had, and that's what we truly believe. So this year for us, it's going to be important that we keep building with new system, new coaches, new philosophy, but we have to start. You can't start the season on the bad foot, so we're going to need a strong start, and then we'll go from there.
Pierre-Luc Dubois with us. Pierre, it's an off day for the club. Got to ask you, what's a perfect off day for you? What do you do when you're not at the rink or don't have to go in for practice?
Well, in the perfect world, I get to wake up a bit later than I usually do. Right now, I'm at the rink. I was going to come do a little treatment. I missed a few practices this week, so do a little treatment, warm up some new skates, or maybe get a little sauna in, relax. But perfect off day. Bring my dog for a walk. Really, for me, it's about charging the batteries and getting back to 100%. So that's what I'm going to try to be doing today.
When you're away from the rink, do you spend a lot of time thinking about, talking about, watching hockey, or are you one of those players that has a nice balance between the job and what you have to do and when you're at work and what you do away from the rink?
I love hockey. Obviously, it's my job and it's my passion. I love talking about hockey. Me and my dad, that's probably 90% of our conversations. But when I'm away from the rink, I like to keep my mind fresh because I feel like when I come back to the rink the next day, I'm excited because I haven't thought about it for 12 hours. Even 12 hours doesn't seem like much. So when I'm out, when I'm away, when I'm at home, I try to keep it light. I try to change my mind. I have other passions. I love soccer. That's probably my favorite sport after hockey. So always trying to learn about that and all that stuff. But I try to stay away, not away, but try to change my mind a bit sometimes.
It's soccer guy. Well, do you have a favorite squad, and how fired up for you for Canada to finally be back in the World Cup next month?
Oh yeah, I'm already preparing brackets for a team. I'm really excited for the World Cup. That's going to be a really fun month of watching a lot of soccer and recording a lot of games, and probably wearing the same Canadian jersey 5 days a week to the rink. So I'm really excited, really looking forward to that. It's different also than what it usually is. It's always in the summer, so it'll be fun to have that in the middle of the season now.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy that it's happening in late November, but whenever and wherever the fact that Canada's in, I think it's going to be amazing for the country, and it'll be very different at that time of year when it's usually about, the stretch, really getting into hockey season. But we'll have plenty of time here on the show to talk all of it. Hey, outside of hockey, is there a favorite? Do you have a favorite athlete or a player? We've had a lot of talk about Roger Federer, who just retired, and it's interesting as to how many athletes in other sports look to him for both his greatness and the way that he conducts himself. Is there a non-hockey player that you've always looked up to or have a special fondness for?
That's a good one. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, I also like soccer. I was a big Wayne Rooney fan. Now he's retired, so it's not him anymore. But I mean, Roger, coming back to him, I'm a decently big tennis fan. I'm not a huge tennis fan, but I like watching. I like watching the U.S. Open, French Open, and all that. But I mean, Roger is just kind of at the top of class in sports, and I mean everybody saw the reactions that every athlete and person in the world had when he retired. It's pretty crazy to think that you can get that much respect just from playing one sport. It's not just the tennis world that was sad about his retirement, the whole world. So that was a pretty impressive thing to see last month.
Back to hockey for a minute. Who's the toughest goalie that gives you the most problems when you're out there? And who's the guy that you maybe have the best rivalry with on the ice when you know that he's out there, you're going to have a real tough night or great battles?
Well, I can't say Bucky because obviously I play with him now, but I just have to mention his name because if he hears this, he'll be happy. But I think Elvis in Columbus, I got to know him. I played with him for a bit. We're good friends. So I think when we play them, he knows I want to score. I want to score on him. And I know if he doesn't give me a goal, he'll be happy and he'll be texting me after the game about it. And he's one of the good goalies in this league. So I like our competition that we have going, me and him.
Pierre-Luc Dubois, the Winnipeg Jets, with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Pierre, of course, you've had a great impact here in Winnipeg, and made a lot of fans here in very quick time. And I think part of what happened in the summer, with it being such a big story about what would be happening with your future, is a big part of just how important you were with the club. I know you've clarified things, and listen, in that dead zone when there wasn't a lot of other big sports news going on, sometimes those stories take on a life of their own. I know you've spoken with Sean Reynolds and some others. I mean, do you think about your contract situation a lot, or is that easy for you to put aside? And just for Winnipeg Jet fans, how would you characterize your situation going into this season and next?
Yeah, I mean, I think to start, everybody's different. Everybody has different motives, and everybody thinks differently. And I accept that when people write their stories or articles or anything, I just look at it through their lens. But for me personally, whether I have a 1-year contract or an 8-year contract, I'm just thinking about winning. I'm going into my 6th season. The furthest I've gone in the playoffs is the 2nd round, and it's frustrating. It's I want to be on a team that's winning Stanley Cups, and that's all I'm thinking about this year. And like I said earlier, I know we have a good team, and I know what we can do here, and we all do. So this year, it's all about that and nothing else.
Yeah, and I mean, then going forward, I mean, just to clarify, I mean, everything's on the table, including potentially staying here in Winnipeg. I mean, I think probably the best thing for Winnipeg would be have a great season, to be on a great team, have a lot of success, and see from there. But you haven't ruled anything out going forward, correct?
Yeah, no, exactly. It was just about this summer. It was just about getting the 1-year contract and anything's on the table. But, this summer just wasn't ready to necessarily decide, the next 8 or 6 or 7 or 8 years of my life. But everything's still on the table. I've enjoyed my time here in Winnipeg and playing with these teammates and, getting to know the city and getting to know the fans. It's been great, and everybody's been extremely nice to me. So everything's still on the table.
All right, before we go, you and the fellas are heading out to Calgary to finish up the preseason and then hanging out in Banff. Do you know what you guys are going to be up to? I mean, what's on the agenda for the Winnipeg Jets as you kind of wait a little bit more time than other teams to start your season next Friday?
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been to Banff twice, but only in the winter, so it'll be exciting to see what it looks like in the summer. I think we got some golf, we got some fishing. It'll be a fun trip. Get to know the guys even more and have everybody together. Obviously when we're at home after the rink, everybody goes home and they go see their families. But when we're in Banff, it's just going to be us. So that'll be a fun trip and a good way to start the season.
Well, and, speaking of good ways to start the season, I mean, you in particular got a great welcome at Winnipeg Jets Fan Fest at the Iceplex last week. And I can imagine you and everyone looking forward to getting back in front of the faithful next Friday against the New York Rangers. What's the wait going to be like to finally get this season started again after a longer than preferred offseason?
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be really exciting. Like you said, the offseason was a bit too long for our liking, so to be able to get back in front of our fans, start the season off at home, it's going to be great. I mean, there's no better way to start the season. The only better way to start it is with a win, so hopefully we can get that done for our fans.
Well, we're looking forward to it. October 14th, Friday night, Canada Life Center. It's the Jets and the New York Rangers for the home opener. Pierre-Luc, thank you so much for the time. Enjoy the time out west, and all the best for you and your club to have a great season coming up.
Thank you very much.
All right, great stuff with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Really appreciate him jumping on with us today during an off day for the Winnipeg Jets. We'll talk more about it and give us your comments on what you just thought of the chat with PLD in the chat, or if you're watching this afterwards in the comments here. Folks, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. Let's get those likes up for PLD's appearance here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. All right. Hey, a big shout out to our friends over at Nick and Nicky DQ. A blizzard is perfect coming up this weekend. How about an ice cream cake for Thanksgiving? Maybe make mom and dad really happy when you're heading over, or grabbing the gang together for it. Of course, you can pick one up at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQ locations. And while you're there, jump on one of those delicious stack burgers, maybe the honey barbecue chicken fingers, my personal favorite, and all the great ice cream treats and novelties, and the OG, the Blizzard dessert treat. 4 locations for Nick and Nicky DQ. The DQ out in Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. And you can also hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba if you want to custom order a DQ ice cream cake for a quick and easy pickup at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs. And hey, with the weekend coming up, not particularly nice today. It is going to get nicer, though. Still a little bit of time to check out that beautiful new patio at Little Brown Jug that, of course, hosted us for our first ever Winnipeg Sports Talk Sports Trivia Night. Little Brown Jug down in the Exchange, the best place to go to sample all the amazing beers from Little Brown Jug. But if you're unable to make it down, go online at littlebrownjug.ca for citywide delivery, or pick up the great taste of Little Brown Jug at your local beer store. And of course, many fine bars and restaurants have 1919 on tap. Always a great choice when you're going for a pint. All right, we'll get to Coolbet Lines before the end of the program. Let's get Remis back in here. And Remo was seeing in the chat a lot of nice response for Pierre-Luc Dubois joining us today on the program. Got to hit a number of topics with him. And listen, I think he's pretty optimistic going into the into the season, and you would hope that would be the case, certainly for everybody with the club. And of course, had to ask him about just the way he would characterize his situation with the contract going into this year, just sort of get everything out on the table. Very similar to what he had said to Sean Reynolds, that, they hasn't ruled anything out. And honestly, I know there's still maybe some people that are bent about the way Pat Brisson handled things and floated a few things out publicly. But I will say this. I don't know anyone coming off of that season that the Winnipeg Jets just had, not knowing who the coach is, not knowing so much uncertainty about the team going forward, would be thinking about jumping into a long-term deal. All that being said, though, as I mentioned in the interview, I really do believe that if Dubois can have a great season personally, if the team can succeed, if they can get to the playoffs, if they can make the guys in that room seem like, this is a bright future for the Winnipeg Jets, I certainly think the Jets will be in the mix. They're going to need to find that out, because if it's not happening, they will need to trade him. But seems like he's got his head in the right place going forward, and just having an open mind to potentially staying here, I think, is good news for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I think after last season, I don't know if any player was like, yeah, sign me up for another, 7 years or whatever it is, even if it is going to be, like $60 million. I think he seems like a guy, it's not all about the money for him. He wants to play hard. He wants to win. And I think from his comments at the start of this season and kind of you heard from him at the end of last season, I don't think he agreed with some of the coaching philosophies from before on how they were going to play. He talked how he likes to play fast, and they're doing that now, and we'll see how he goes. I think we can all agree that he's gonna be playing hard. One, he's got a new contract due at the end of the season, but look, he likes the way they're playing. He's got good line mates. I think he's gonna have a good season. We'll see how it goes, and I'm a big fan of PLD. So I saw some. I think you still get PLD 13 jerseys on sale, so that's kind of right up my alley. But he is number 80 now.
I did see at the pro shop at the game yesterday in the upper bowl, there was a big deal on some Aviator 13 Dubois.
Yes, sign me up.
If you wanted to pick one of those are there. Hey, Paulo, thanks very much for the super chat. PLD wants to win the cup. Is that in Montreal? If the Jets are a higher contender than the Habs, he likely stays, right? I'm sure there'll be more to it than that. But the bottom line, and we go back to this, and we kind of said, honestly, throughout last year, who after the season that the Jets had with the way that it was finished would be thinking like, okay, yeah, you know what, now's the time to be inking long-term. The fact of the matter is he's back. I don't think there's any question about his level of engagement. Even last season, when there were a lot of questions about some other guys on the squad, we weren't saying that about Dubois. And I think it's important to, for all sides, have an open mind, see what happens, let this play out this season. And then for Kevin Cheveldayoff, whether it is later on this year or at the end of the season, figure out the lay of the land. And if they're not able to get him done, they'll have to move him to make sure that they do get something for a very important asset that they gave up so much to get. But the bottom line, Michael Remis, is that Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be a big, big part of this team. And, with the first line loaded up as we saw last night with Connor, Ehlers, and Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to have a lot on his shoulders and a great opportunity to, be the leader and the driver of that second line, starting off with Blake Wheeler and young Cole Perfetti on the left.
Yeah, that's going to be a line to watch. You kind of do like having, and Bowness has mentioned this, the bigger Dubois with Wheeler, bigger Wheeler, and the youngster Perfetti. Dubois, 60 points last year in 81 games. I think he beats that. I think it's going to be around there. It's going to be close. I think a lot of it depends on power play time. He appears to be ready for that, top power play spot. I think the Gagne spot, although Gagne yesterday, he was pretty good. So, we'll have to wait and see how that all shakes out. But I think somewhere around there would be solid for him, and would definitely help the Winnipeg Jets. Having those, let's get the first line and second line scoring in the same game, and I think that would lead to a couple more wins as well.
Well, for sure. I mean, there's about wins. It's about having fun. It's about a new atmosphere. All those things seem to be improved from last year. Now, like we've heard in the chat, what happens when the team goes on a losing streak? Well, I mean, let's face it, winning is fun. They can do a lot more winning. I think, it puts everybody in a better situation. I think gives the Jets a much better chance to maintain some of the players and keep them around here long term. That being said, next Friday is what it's all about. Rangers, Jets, home opener, game number 1 of 82. We'll have plenty of time to micromanage and break down all of the intricacies of the Jets contract situation and roster. But first things first, it's time to play some hockey. But of course, the Jets tomorrow out in Calgary for that final game. Remo, you watched the stream last night. I mean, how was it watching a game live on the internet as opposed to regular cable television?
Yeah, that was the big topic. We've even had people come in chat today saying they didn't even know the game wasn't on TV. They tried finding it on TSN, and I tweeted out there were some great CTO tips yesterday from Winnipeg Sports Talk. Those were money. I tweeted out tips about the best way to do it. What I didn't add, they didn't really advertise this, but it is on the NHL app. So if you're on any of the NHL app, on Fire TV, I guess it's Apple TV, any other, Google TV, I'm sure it's on all of them. You can just go to the Jets page, and it was on the front page. I fired it up. I tried it on my tablet, Apple iPad, and my Android tablet. I tried it on everything. It looked good. Nice to hear the Edmonds call for a TV game. The intermission, I mean, it was pretty. They didn't have like the intermission panel. They just showed the Nate Schmidt car video and the Neil Pionk off-season boating videos, which I enjoyed. So it worked. We're good. Someone said to me, "It's like this game's not on TV. What are we in the 70s?" I was like, "No, it's streaming only. It's 2022. We're seeing it in the U.S. They got the Apple TV games on Friday. Peacocks, this is for baseball. Peacocks got Sunday morning baseball exclusive. Thursday Night Football in the U.S. is Amazon Prime only. So we haven't had to deal with that here. I will say one thing. Someone, tweeted at me who was from, outside of the city. And I will agree with this, that, internet coverage outside of the Winnipeg kind of sucks. At our cottage at Winnipeg Beach, they don't have it. It's supposed to be coming any day now, but some places, not able to get high-speed internet.
Yeah, I know full well about that. Never mind high-speed internet. How about cell service? I mean, when Rick Bowness was famously hired, I was at Clear Lake Golf Course, and I don't think I knew for about 90 minutes until my phone started working when I got to the back nine.
Yeah, so... And that's the one thing I think, I don't know about the U.S., but in Canada for sure, especially rural Manitoba, if you're going to do, I don't know if you can do a game streaming only, because a lot of people, it's not that they can't, they want to buy internet, but it's not there. And I did see Bell put out a release saying they're going to be installing it in more places, but some places you can't get it. So TV it's 2 games, preseason games. It'll be back on regular TV on TSN next Friday for game 1 against the Rangers, which is actually their game 3. Which kind of makes me nervous for the Jets, to be honest. Playing first game after a layoff.
Hey,
a team that's
Rangers going to be playing 3 and 4, different time zone. Come on, this is just made for a home win. I'm joking, of course. Hey, schedule is what it is. You got to play who's coming, and man, I'm looking forward to that game. We're going to be all over the Winnipeg Jets. We'll get some dispatches from Banff early in the week, and then. It's all going to lead to, of course, tomorrow or next week, a week tomorrow for the home opener between the Winnipeg Jets and the New York Rangers. Hey, before we go, and again, Thursday night football tonight, let's get to the Coolbet lines for tonight. Indy and the Broncos. I don't know what to expect from either of these teams. They've been so disappointing so far. But the Colts are 3.5-point favorites right now. That actually has come down a little bit to -111. Before it was -120. And the total for this game, anywhere between 41.5 and 42.5. I will tell you, I've got a daily pick for Coolbet. We're undefeated so far this week, heading into Thursday. I have no confidence in either of these offenses. +120 on the over 3.5 field goals for today. It's one of those fun bets you can get in the game props, but do like the Colts plus the points. Not a heavy lean. And I'll definitely be on the under 42.5 for tonight's game. Use the promo code WST at Coolbet for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit, just in time for baseball playoffs tomorrow. And of course, another week in the National Football League. And of course, Bombers Elks right now. Let's just see if that line has moved at all. It has been 13 all week, and it's 13 right now as well. Hamilton -2.5 against Saskatchewan at home. Argos -1.5 against BC. Bombers 13-point home favorites over the Elks, and the Alouettes laying 7 at home against the Ottawa Redblacks, with Bobby Dice getting the opportunity to be the interim head coach in the aftermath of the firing of Paul LaPolice. Remo, tomorrow's show is going to be awesome. Heading into the weekend, Ken Wiebe is going to join us, and we're also going to speak to, and I'm really looking forward to this, the legendary former voice of Jets 1.0, Kurt Kirouac, who's going to join us to talk a little Jets and more stories from his book right here. 2 minutes for talking to myself. Really cool to see Kurt involved in the Dale Hawerchuk night, with the that video he did talking about Dale that was played at the game on Saturday night. And I've been going through the book. It's really neat. It's a lot of great stories from the olden days. And I think people are going to really enjoy Kurt's visit with us tomorrow on the show.
Yeah, once I saw he had the book coming out, I got excited. Everyone loves stories. Jets 1.0. I also watched him on that Hawerchuk video. The book looks pretty good, so we're excited to have him on tomorrow, and we're going to tee up the Jets game against Calgary. Also tee up the Bombers game. Lots to get to. Very exciting time, Hustler. Closing in on the start. Oh, yeah, the Jays will be playing at 3 as well. So after the
marble
show,
race right into playoff baseball. Hell yeah, I cannot wait. And, of course, tomorrow noon before we get going on Winnipeg Sports Talk, the big NFL Week 5 Best Bet Pick show. That'll be coming up at noon. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at Hustlerama and subscribe to the Lock Shop wherever you get it. Hey, Running Man has mentioned this a couple times in the chat. We should get to this. That moron that was running around on the field with the pink smoke bomb on Monday Night Football that ended up getting leveled by Bobby Wagner on Monday is apparently filing a police report over the tackle. Bobby Wagner spoke about the incident on Wednesday, saying it's behind him. I can't really focus on it. I'm more concerned about the security guard that was hurt trying to chase him and the people that was. We don't know what that is, and you just got to do what you got to do. I saw a couple lawyers saying this. I mean, this guy's going to have to get past trespassing and more, and it wasn't particularly malicious, just something that needed to be happened. You want to run around like an idiot on a field full of professional NFL football players and delay the game, you best be ready to get blown up. Although, and I showed you this off air, we don't have the clip to play, but the funniest thing about that entire event was post-game, Bobby Wagner was getting interviewed, and a woman was asking him, and I sort of got the impression that she was more a news reporter that was asking Bobby about what happened. And afterwards, she said, well, did your coaches talk to you about what had happened? And then he goes, well, what do you mean what had happened? And then she said, well, you know what occurred when you went and made the play? And he goes, made the play on the fan? And then she goes, yeah. He goes, no, that wasn't a play. That was just going forward. It was a very, very funny back and forth. If you can see the post-game audio after that Rams lost to the Niners on Monday night. That being said, quiet night tonight, but things get going tomorrow. 4 Major League Baseball wildcard games, Jays and Mariners, right after Winnipeg Sports Talk tomorrow at 3 p.m. We'll talk about that, get a little Bomber preview, maybe a visit from Hacksaw, Kurt Kirouac, Ken Wiebe, the latest on the Jets going into the preseason finale tomorrow night in Calgary, and a little tee up of what the team's going to be doing out in Banff when Ken joins us as well, Reem.
Yeah, before we go, a couple other notes, and we are looking forward to tomorrow's show. Jason Robertson had the late night contract with Dallas. We talked about him, holding out, and he had it seems like a pretty reasonable contract for him. He'll still be an RFA after. 4-year deal with Dallas. It was 7. I'm trying to think. 7. What was it? something.
7.75. The
Yeah.
first year, it's $1.5 million salary and $3 million bonus, or vice versa, and then it's like 8, 9 point something, 9 point something
Okay.
for a for. Did you say he'll be an RFA at the end of that?
It'll be a final year of RFA after, with like just over 9 million qualifying offer. So I think it's going to work out pretty well for him. Might even work out for the Stars. We'll see. Maybe they'll have those. I don't know what their contract situation is with guys coming off the books, but we did have some other roster moves. People saying Jake Virtanen released from his PTO by Edmonton. Seemed like, there's off ice stuff, but on ice, I mean, he's not a player anymore. Sonny Milano cut by Calgary, him and Cody Eakin. That was interesting. We talked about Milano, had a good season last year. Couldn't catch on Calgary. I'm curious.
The fact that he didn't, and the fact that he had to take a PTO was incredible. Now, maybe he thought that he would go into Calgary, have a great camp, and be able to demand a better contract than, maybe he was being offered at other spots through earning it through a PTO. He didn't do much. I was talking with some guys from Calgary heading into the game and last night, and he had not been a factor whatsoever. And obviously now is still looking for work. And hey, there'll be injuries. There'll be some things that'll happen. We'll see Sonny Milano in the National Hockey League this year. But surprisingly, after the year he had last season, it might take a little bit longer. And honestly, we would still surprised that there's not room for him in Anaheim after the year that he had playing with Zegras.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on where a guy who had just over 30 points in a season couldn't get a real contract and had to get a PTO. He had 34 in 66 games. Like that's pretty good. That's a little more than half a point a game. You think he would be able to be a player for someone? I don't know what happened in Anaheim. I don't know. It's mystery. You think this guy could get a contract, but he didn't, and we're here now. I don't know what's going to happen. It's interesting.
Well, that'll certainly be something we'll pay attention to throughout the next few weeks and see where Sonny Milano ends up. As of right now, our focus, though, is who makes the Winnipeg Jets and who will be in that lineup next week. One more chance to impress the coaches. But as we said from Rick Bowness, I think we'll have a pretty good idea on that opening night lineup tomorrow. Opening night lineup next Friday from tomorrow's lineup in Calgary. He said that's going to be pretty darn close to the lineup that they roll out in front of the home fans for the home opener. Tickets still available. You can get those at winnipegjets.com. And that's going to do it for us today. Big thanks to the Jet staff for helping us hook up with Pierre-Luc Dubois, and of course for Pierre-Luc for joining us today on WST. Great chats with Rewucki and Scott Billeck as well. Enjoy the football game tonight, and don't forget to join us tomorrow. Big show, Blue Jays, Jets, Bombers, NFL. It is going to be packed. We'll see you then. By the way, make sure you've hit that red subscribe button and tell a friend about Winnipeg Sports Talk if you get a chance. We'll see you tomorrow, folks. Thanks for being with us. Suits on tomorrow, marbles. We'll see you tomorrow at 1.
Oh, sorry. Let me hit the end button.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.